We here at the Sports History Network proudly partner with 26 podcasts, all revolving around the history of sports. But did you know that many of our hosts were sports history authors way before they started their shows? It's true. We've got Joe Ziemba, host of When Football Was Football, Joe Zagurski, host of Pro Football in the 1970s, Mark Morthier, host of Yesterday's Sports, Tommy Phillips, host of Lombardi Memories, and Scott Adamson, co-host of From the 55-Yard Line. All these authors have many books for you to choose from. To check them out, go to our website at sportshistorynetwork.com/sportshistorybooks. Pick up your copy today. Soundtrack provided by Kevin MacLeod of filmmusic.io.
This podcast is part of the Sports History Network, your headquarters for the yesteryear of your favorite sport. You can learn more at sportshistorynetwork.com.
Hello again, I'm John Gidley, and welcome to another trip into the football attic. Continuing with my interview series, I am pleased to be joined tonight by the senior editor of the Giant Insider publication, of which I am a proud contributor, and he is the biggest fan of the New York Football Giants that I know, and he is Jerry Foley. Jerry, welcome.
John, thanks for having me. It's an honor, bud.
Thank you. So, take me back. How did you become a fan of the Giants? Is it something that was passed on from preceding generations?
Interesting. So I'll give you something that a lot of people don't know. Early on, and I've written about this, so it's not that much of a secret to subscribers. Early on, when you're trying to annoy your father, you don't really like his team sometimes, right? You just want to be the adversary. So I will say this. When I was 5 years old, someone bought me a Wilbert Montgomery jersey, and I would wear it around and try to piss off my father. So, I didn't really love the Eagles. I just wore the jersey because that was the only jersey I had. And then, jerseys back then weren't like today. Like you got a jersey back then at it seemed more rare for some reason. But I was at I don't know if it was one of those post-Wake Irish Catholic things that people have, but I was at an event in early 1982. And I was at this time around, by that time I was 7 years old, early 82. And I remember my dad's side of the family making fun of him because the Giants were losing to the 49ers. And they were Jets, Eagles, they were all different, fans. And I remember it was almost like Michael Corleone with his father. And I just said, I'm with you now. And that was it. Like from then on, I was Giants, Rangers, Yankees, and that was it. So I always, as a little kid, I always liked the Yankees, I think. But for football, it really wasn't until that time where I just got really mad at everyone making fun of my old man. And I said, you know what, I'm going to be a Giants fan here. And that was it, man. That was it. I wanted to like the teams my father liked. So
off and running. So you became a fan a couple of years before they really took off the dynasty of the 80s and early 90s. That must have been, I can't imagine a more exciting time to be a fan than that era.
Yeah, my first year, the first year that I remember watching every single game was 83 when they were 3-12-1. And then from like 84 on, it was just fun. Like 3-12-1, I would try and convince people that Rob Carpenter, and I was a stupid little kid, Rob Carpenter was better than John Riggins. But just an idiot. But yeah, from then on, man, it was a blast. Like I say on the podcast, Sundays are Giant days. It was an event at our house, and it was my dad. It was Sunday mass, and then the Giants were on, and that was it. It was me, my dad, and my sister, and we watched every single game, never missed a minute.
Which of the two early Super Bowl victories, if you could pick, which was more fulfilling or exciting, 86 or 90?
I always remember your first, John.
Yeah.
But, for my father, I was happy for 86 just because I had understood by then how long he was a fan and suffered, and there were some bad teams. But, in 90, I was in high school and going to a Super Bowl party to watch the game, and then Norwood missed. It's hard for anything to beat 86, but 1990 was really exciting too. I'd have to say 86 was a little better than 90, but 90 was like you're in high school, you're a junior in high school. It's a formative years. And I just remembered the event that the Super Bowl party was with all these Giant fans around. So.
And then the other two more recent victories, 07 and 2011, I guess 07 might've been a little better simply because the Patriots were undefeated.
Yeah. Absolutely. And the way they won with Tyree and it was insane. You saw how good the defense was coming on, but Eli Manning kind of came into his own really out of nowhere.
He did. And, well, the defense, that's one of the better performances in Super Bowl or playoff history, considering they held a team. Tom Brady threw, 50 touchdown passes that season. Randy Moss caught like 24 of them, and they're held to 14 points. Really just unbelievable.
And see, that's what I mean. You're the one who's going to rattle off their stats from not random, but like you would know it. And it was weird, man, because I thought that the biggest obstacle for them were the Cowboys. And I thought if they can beat the Dallas Cowboys, they beat them twice that year, and they soundly beat them. I mean, I don't know what the final scores were. You probably know. But I remember being at Giant Stadium and thinking, man, they were just outclassed today. But I thought if they beat the Cowboys, they have a shot. Once they beat the Cowboys, it was like, they can do this. And I wasn't afraid of Lambeau Field and how old, Brett Favre was at the time. And then they beat them and you thought, man, they played the Patriots great in week 17.
Mm-hmm.
They could take this team. And the defense and like guys like Justin Tuck were just coming into their own. So you just felt like, you know what, they can do this. And I felt pretty confident going in that the game was at least going to be close.
Was that last regular season game against the Patriots, were the Giants already in the playoffs?
Yes. Yeah, it meant nothing.
So
it meant nothing.
That's what people have been comparing it to. Giant fans, of course, are up in arms about what happened with the Eagles in Week 17, comparing it to, well, the Eagles had nothing to play for, but they still could have knocked off a rival, even if it meant bringing one rival into the playoffs. It would still mean, keeping one of your other rivals out of the playoffs. In stark contrast to the Giants giving the Patriots everything they had in that last game of the year.
Yeah, and I actually tweeted that. So I kind of made that comparison myself. And I know the situation was a little different, but the Giants, Coughlin played it the right way. And the message that John Madden left him afterwards kind of validated it, right? Like, this is the way you play the game. Giants had nothing to play for other than to try and knock off the Patriots. And, Coughlin, he said, I can't just sit guys and who's going to play, who's not going to play. Well, let's just go for it. And I thought it helped them. I thought if they had sat players, the whole thing would have turned out differently. So Coughlin played it honorably, played it the right way, and it worked out for them. So
4 Super Bowl victories, but there have been a couple of heartbreaks in between, which I'm sure there were some that just really gutted you.
Yeah. Oh, God. I can think of 3. The 88 Altoon game where I think Mark Collins wasn't playing or got hurt. Tom Flynn was in, who was a really good special teams player, but that 88 team was pretty good, and they didn't make the playoffs at 10-6. That was the first of the Eagles winning the division, and they beat the Giants twice that year. 2002, the playoff game against the 49ers, that collapse was horrific.
Trey Junkin.
And we were just talking about it last night on our podcast, like. Yeah, Trey Junkin, but the defense gave up 39 points. I think it was 39, 38 or 42. I forget what it was. But Shockey dropping that touchdown, you just felt the momentum change. Like, they had to kick a field goal there when he had an easy touchdown. He catches that ball, game's over. But you just felt as a Giants fan like, oh, man, that was bad. That might come back and bite us. And it did. And then obviously, come on, you're going to do this to me. But the Deshaun Jackson game.
Well, yeah. What can you do? That was another year, right? They went 10-6 and
they didn't make it. Yeah, they didn't make it, and then they won a Super Bowl at 9-7. So
twice, right? Or was the 07 team 10-6?
No, the 07 team was 10-6, but the 11 team was 9-7, and even the 2012 team was 9-7, and they didn't make the playoffs. But yeah, that Deshaun Jackson game, and the worst part about that was the Giants still controlled their own fate. But it was such a blow. They went into Green Bay, got smoked the next week, and then they beat the Redskins to finish 10-6. So, yeah, just I would say those 3 games were the ones that really stick out.
How did the Giant Insider come to be?
So it was a publication in the 90s. And I don't know if it was born out of Giants Extra, but Ken Palmer was the old editor. And I would write in seemingly every week, just writing into Ken. And I got to know him and said, hey, man, can I ever get a column? And he's like, I'll give you a chance one day. I said, all right, never thought anything more about it. And then one day I did a tour of MetLife Stadium, and it was 2010. My daughter was at a dance competition in the Meadowlands, and I wanted to kill time. So I walked over to the stadium, and they did a tour. And I wrote an article about the tour, and Ken Palmer said, can you do this every week? And I said, yeah. So it started there. And then he brought me on full time the following year. I think that was, So that was 2012. It was after the Super Bowl. I went on that tour. So it was 2013. He brought me on as a staff writer. And then after that, he was like, write more and more. And I did. And then a few years ago, he said, hey, I'm going to step aside. You want to be the editor? And I was like, well, what does that entail? He's like, not much more than you're doing now, which it does. I mean, it's looking at everyone's and it's like you're correcting papers every week and you're correcting your own, which is a lot harder than I ever thought it would be. Oddly enough, most of the mistakes I find are with myself because I know what I want to say, and I'm reading it as I'm saying it. But when I look at other people's, it's a lot easier. So long story short, he gave me a chance and I've just, it's kind of taken a life of its own with Chris Bisignano and I. So.
Yeah. And the podcast recently too.
Yep.
Give me an appraisal of the Giants right now. What do you think about their future?
Very bright. I love Philly's own Joe Judge, Lansdale Catholic.
He is indeed.
Yeah, I mean, look, they have the right guy. A couple years ago, and again, we were talking about this last night. They had so many positions for the draft that it's like, other than running back, it was take whatever you want because we need help everywhere. And this was 2000. It was the Daniel Jones draft. So you're like, oh my God, quarterback, defensive line, secondary, wide receiver, you name it, offensive line. They needed help everywhere. This year, it's like, you know what? In free agency, they can do some damage, and they still need a wideout. They need an edge rusher, probably a cornerback too, but although Julian Love looked good the last two games, we wish he had a shot before. And you know what? Still offensive line, and I'll be honest with you, man, tight end. I know Evan Ingram made the Pro Bowl, but they need an upgrade. So it's down to about 5 positions that they need, 3 of which are absolutely crucial, I think, in wide receiver, edge rusher, and I think tight end is critical that they do something there. So,
you think Jones is the guy at quarterback?
I hope so. I can't judge him after this year, being that the line was so inconsistent. And I mean, the Giants receivers had the worst separation in the league. They were so inconsistent. It's very hard to judge them. What I loved was the Dallas game, where maybe the numbers weren't eye-popping, but I thought it was his best game. Not only other than the Tampa Bay game from last year, I thought it was his best game as a pro. He was more careful with the ball this year, so he did improve in that aspect. Like, he doesn't fumble as much. He's not as careless with the interceptions. So they got to give him one more chance, and they have to put some talent around him before they can determine if he is the guy or not. But the franchise is all in with him. So even if we don't think he is, the Maras love him.
And the other thing is Barkley was gone for basically the entire year. He was done in week 2.
And everybody forgets about it. I do too. Like, you forget about the fact that, Wayne Gallman, he didn't really even get a shot till later in the season. So it was, they brought in Devontae Freeman they brought in for a while. Mm-hmm. Brought in Alfred Morris and they brought in Deion. It was like, oh man, like, give Gallman a chance. So he didn't really get going or even get a shot till this year. And, without Barkley, I mean, the offense just was brutal. Absolutely brutal. Well,
it was. Giant fans on Twitter, anytime they wear the throwback from the 80s, the white uniforms where instead of NY on the helmet, it says Giants, they love that. Would you like to see that make a return full time, or do you like the current ones?
No, I'd love that to come back, but I'd also like the blue uniforms with that Giants to come back. But oddly enough, they've lost every game since they've done that, the color rush. So every time, look it up, and you're better at this than I am. Every time they've worn those jerseys, they've worn them a few times against the Eagles. They've lost them all. Dallas, I think it's Eagles and Dallas are the 2 teams. And then this year against the Bucs, they lost. So they've never won with those coming back, even though Giant fans love them.
What about the red jerseys?
Hated them. I actually emailed the Giants about them, and I'm like, guys, get rid of these things. They're terrible. Of course, I bought one because I'm a buffoon. I had a red Seahorn years ago.
Oh, God.
The only Giants, like red jersey I would wear now is like when I'm on the beach and I'm playing with all the, I'm the permanent quarterback for all the kids. The red jersey means you don't touch the quarterback. So
you got a lot of memorabilia back there. Which do you think is the most valuable?
I have a seat from the Polo Grounds. That's not in sight. I also have. There's a couple things, right? And I'm an idiot with this stuff. I love it. A seat from the Polo Grounds with the old baseball Giants logo on the seat. That's a difference maker, right? Because some of them are just bars, but I have that one.
Yeah.
I have the program from 1925, the Red Grange game, that was probably the most important game in Giants history, in that they were in the red, oddly enough, the red. And then the Maras went out to Chicago. I think it was Tim and Jack Mara. It was Wellington's father and brother. And they got back, and I think the story is Wellington Mara asked them, did we get Red Grange? And they said, well, sort of. But they played the Giants at the Meadowlands, at the Polo Grounds. And Red Grange was like Patrick Mahomes, or Deion Sanders, or name whoever you want that's going to attract a crowd. He was that guy back then. Polo Grounds had so many tickets sold, and the Giants were in the black from then on. So that program is the most crucial, I think, even more so than the first one in Giants history. I have the program from December 7th, 1941, Pearl Harbor Day. I have both Giants who passed away in World War II. I have their autographs. So look, man, I've been collecting a long time. I was fortunate that my parents got me a lot when I was younger. I was a slam dunk at like Christmas and birthdays. Like, oh yeah, what do you get me? Anything Giants, right? You're, to a lesser extent, Rangers and Yankees. But yeah, I would say those pieces are probably they're the most valuable, also most important. Like, I love the fact that something from the Polo Grounds is in my house. Like, I love it.
Oh, it's amazing. And that's got to be like almost 100 years old now.
Well, yeah, they redid this Polo Grounds burned down a couple times. And I believe it was like 1911 or 12 when they erected the newest version of it, and they put those seats in. So yeah, it's over 100 years old. I think that was the year, because the Yankees were moving in from Hilltop Park. Again, if you look this up, you'll remember it right away. But they moved out of Hilltop Park. They moved to the Polo Grounds, and I think it was like a return favor because the Polo Grounds had burned down, and I think the Giants had played at Hilltop Park for a season. But anyway, it was around that time that they rebuilt the Polo Grounds. So that seat's from then. So
that is amazing.
Yeah, and it's funny. It's green now because right before the Mets moved in, they painted the seats green, which never made any sense to me. The Mets are not green.
No, they're not. Well, what were they before?
They were orange and gray and black, kind of like the Giants color, the baseball Giants colors. So you can see some of the paint on the iron fading. You can see those colors kind of coming through. So
that is amazing.
Yeah,
and there's no topping that, really. Jerry, I want to thank you very much for joining me here on the Football Attic. Really appreciate it.
Anytime. I felt like early on admitting that I used to wear a Wilbert Montgomery jersey, like I was with I'm with a psychiatrist. But thanks, John. I appreciate it, man. And great job in the Insider, dude. You kill it every week. So
hey, thanks very much. I really appreciate that. And I appreciate you for listening. I hope you'll join us next time here on the Football Attic. And in the meantime, check out all the other great podcasts here on the Sports History Network, and follow me on Twitter at JFG Sports. Until next time, this is John Gidley.
This podcast is part of the Sports History Network, your headquarters for the yesteryear of your favorite sport. You can learn more at sportshistorynetwork.com.
We at the Sports History Network are thrilled to work with our sponsors and partners. With their support, we are able to produce great content for you. The other cool thing is most of our sponsors and partners offer discounts to pass along to our fans. So if you go to the sportshistorynetwork.com/sponsors page, you'll find Row 1, Royal Retros, Play Classic, Thrive Fantasy, and Mega Seats. All of these offer great discounts. Specifically at Row 1, you can save 15% at the Row 1 Gallery with the code SHN. The Row 1 Gallery includes over 5,200 reproduced sports history prints on a variety of sizes of wood, metal, canvas, acrylic, or poster paper. The Row 1 shop also has thousands of more unique items with retro and historical designs dating back to 1876, including t-shirts and long-sleeve shirts, phone cases and mugs, blankets and pillows, towels, and even shower curtains. With Royal Retros, they're the king of throwbacks. They've got jerseys, shirts, hats, collectibles, and more from defunct leagues and other teams in those leagues. From Play Classic games, it's sports simulation board games. Just use the code SHN for 10% off your first order. From Thrive Fantasy, it's a daily fantasy sports and esports app for player props. Use the promo code SHN for instant 100% match up to $100. And with Mega Seats, they're tickets with no fees. You can save up to 10% with the code SHN. So check them out on the SportsHistoryNetwork.com sponsors page. That's SportsHistoryNetwork.com/sponsors. The soundtrack is provided by Kevin MacLeod of FilmMusic.io.